What I love most about A Farewell to Arms by Ernest Hemingway is the intimacy in which Hemingway does his characterization. Hemingway adds certain dialogue that sets characters apart from one another in order to create a clear distinction in the way that they speak, such as how Rinaldi, a side character, frequently cracks jokes and calls the protagonist Fred baby. Hemingway also increases characterization by adding in certain Italian colloquialisms in order to put readers into the novel. Furthermore, he goes to great lengths to ensure that his novel has accurate details of what Italy looks like and feels like, and having been to some of the places that Hemingway has described before, I can easily visualize the scenes in which he puts his characters. Now, one of the main criticisms that Hemingway has given about his writing style is his incessant use of run-on sentences, but I actually would argue that they increase the characterization. I say this because it creates a sense of the character's thinking, which creates a continuous chain of consciousness that makes it easier for readers to connect to the characters. I'd also argue that the majority of the time in everyday life, we often go against common grammar rules when speaking to one another. Now, the use of little details about certain characters also benefits characterization, such as when Catherine expresses her fear of rain, or when Fred's inner thoughts are portrayed to readers when the Italian army betrays him. What I also like about the novel is that it is not only a war story, but is a romantic novel as well, which allows for some rich characterization of our protagonist as he experiences perhaps two of the most emotional aspects of life, love and war. What really makes Hemingway stand out from any other novel that I have read is really the level of characterization that goes into his characters, and it really shows the importance that empathy can play in the effectiveness of a novel. Now, into some important quotes that I found significant. One of them is in chapter 9, and it is, "War is not won by victory." This quote is significant for the majority of the novel because the main historical event that the novel is centered around is the retreat from Caporetto. This historical context is important because in this story, the Italian army, in essence, loses and has to retreat, while at the same time Fred ends up winning and having a successful relationship with Catherine, at least in the middle of the novel. It also emphasizes the fact that often it is when one army realizes that they have nothing left to give, and thus are unwilling to fight, which I would think is what fuels the military police to execute officers in Book 4. Another significant quote is, "Anger was washed away in the river along with any obligation." This takes place when Fred has to abandon the Italian army in order to live. This emphasizes the idea that Fred is not angry with the Italians for what they did, executing officers, but rather he accepts that it is a necessary part of war, probably because early in the novel, he too was forced to shoot a disobeying sergeant. Both of these quotes emphasize the emotional drain that war can have on individuals and how it can transform the lives of those around them, which is a continual theme throughout the novel. This idea culminates in the eventual death of both Catherine and the baby. When Fred realizes this fact, he simply walks away, and Hemingway doesn't emphasize any grief that Fred may feel or any emotion that goes through his head like he had prior to the novel. And I think that he does this to show how war can really disillusion soldiers. Hemingway, I believe, through this story, wanted to show the toll that war can take on a man and how it can tear apart lives. He puts a love story and war story side by side in order to create a juxtaposition to show the good and bad of life and how war can destroy the good of life, which is in this case love. This story, in my view, seeks to explain how war can tear lives apart, which is mainly what led to the disillusionment period in literature when World War I ended, as men were unable to readjust to daily life after witnessing the horrors of war. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed A Farewell to Arms by Hemingway, and I would recommend this novel to anyone interested in exploring the psychological aspects that war can take on men and women throughout history. Thank you.